Hey everyone, we're here with Len, the co-owner of Twisted Spoke CBD. We're going to go over some of the finer points of CBD, where it's helpful, what's backed by research, and what's some anecdotal evidence out there, and what's currently being studied for uses with it.
So CBD is a very complex substance, and we do, unfortunately, because of the history around cannabis in general, we have very limited research. There really is one comprehensive study that has looked at all of the studies pertaining to CBD and how that could theoretically translate to athletic performance. What we do know about CBD and where CBD does really well is with stress, anxiety, and sleep.
Something athletes have a lot of.
Right. And when we talk about, performance gains, where we really get gains with CBD is in that recovery space and just allowing our bodies to reset. Our bodies are partially governed by an endocannabinoid system, and our bodies are naturally producing all of these cannabinoids all the time. What we're trying to do is just help the body facilitate getting more of those cannabinoids. Okay. So just like when you take a B supplement or something like that, right? It's something your body's already producing. It's something your body already needs. We're just trying to help facilitate getting more in there. So inflammation is a big one. It's a super powerful anti-inflammatory. It's also a very powerful antioxidant. We have a lot of studies around CBD and stress in terms of anxiety, and also with public speaking and a few other aspects around that. It's a little less specific, but I believe that CBD is a really, really powerful when used to deal with pre-race jitters. And it's something that I've struggled with, and I'm sure a lot of other people have too. And just being able to bring your heart rate down a little bit on the start line sometimes is really beneficial. Part of the study that you're going to drop in the link talks about is that we need more study on these topics. And I think there's going to be in the next few years, and we're really starting to see it relate to athletic performance a little bit more. For me, I am a business owner, so I don't have as much time to ride as I'd like to. And so frequently I do too much riding in very short blocks and deal with a lot of inflammation issues. And so being able to step on that inflammation, whether it's a topical application or ingesting CBD, both can help in different circumstances. Me and my business partner both love single speeds. Our knees hurt. Topicals are great for that. If I'm dealing with a true systemic inflammation from like 60 or 70 miles on the bike, then taking that CBD orally is going to be more beneficial. We also have seen some of our athletes, believe it or not, taking some higher doses before workouts to try to help them get in the zone. And let me just preface higher doses by saying 100 to 200 milligrams. Okay. And we always recommend that folks use higher milligrams because we believe that most CBD companies have not been providing high enough doses. And that's a big part of what we're trying to change, is providing a minimum of 25 milligrams per dose. And that's what we want everybody taking, is a minimum of 25 milligrams. It can definitely be a replacement for NSAIDs or, in a more extreme situation. Like, we've had issues with tramadol use in cycling. Like, it really can, some of the analgesic properties can replace some more hardcore painkillers as well. But you can kind of think about it as a two-pronged approach. Taking it as a daily supplement is going to help your body naturally deal with things in your day-to-day life, whether that is the stress, whether that is the inflammation, banging your head. I was working on my fence the other day and knocked my head. It's like, sweet, a little bit more CBD today. But then when you're doing those really hard efforts, or you need to recover for a really hard effort the next day after a previous workout, some of those higher anti-inflammatory doses can be good. When we take those 100 and 200 milligram doses, or sometimes more, depending on the person. So when we start to take higher doses of cannabinoids and get these anti-inflammatory responses, that's a good thing, but also sports medicine says that, constantly stepping on inflammation isn't a good thing. So, taking small amounts on a daily basis to help with sleep or recovery, I think is what's best for cyclists, and then occasionally doing these larger doses to deal with pain is probably going to be the most beneficial to performance.
When you say smaller daily doses, how would you define that?
Somewhere between 25 and 100 milligrams. When we start to get into the 100 to 300 or even 500 milligram range, those are true anti-inflammatory doses. And also, if we're doing a full spectrum tincture in those kind of quantities on a daily basis, so a tincture with small amounts of THC, that THC buildup is going to happen more rapidly. You're never going to be at risk, and we'll talk about this later, but you're never going to be at risk of testing positive at those kind of doses. But you will test positive for THC, just not over the threshold for doping control.
Yeah, I know they will.
First off, ask for a COA.
COA?
Yes, and so certificate of analysis
Okay,
from a lab that really spells out how much CBD is in that product. We are getting better as an industry, but in the past there definitely have been issues with the milligrams on the label, not maxing the milligrams on the bottle.
Yep.
And also, even in extreme circumstances, higher levels of THC than marked.
That could be problematic.
Yep.
A lot.
And we also work with, so what we've done here is I have 10 years in the marijuana and cannabis industries before this, and we developed relationships with farmers, and so all of our hemp comes from Colorado farms, Colorado extractors, and then brought in here, and then we're blending that in-house. We test all of the product before we blend it. All the product gets tested before it leaves the field. It gets tested before it gets extracted. It gets tested when it gets extracted. We test it again upon arrival here, and then we test the finished product.
That's very important for people that are in scenarios where they can't test positive.
Right, and that's also why we provide both isolate and full spectrum products, because we want everybody to feel comfortable taking CBD, and it's important to have a true THC-free or a non-detectable THC product.
Cool. And then for the people that don't know, isolate versus full spectrum.
Yeah, so an isolate is the true form, or it's the pure CBD, whereas a full spectrum is going to be approximately 120 different cannabinoids and terpenes mixed together, with CBD being the main component of that extract. There's a lot of science that shows that a full spectrum extract can be more effective than an isolate. CBD and THC work synergistically, and even more importantly, all the cannabinoids together all work synergistically to create better homeostasis within our bodies. And really that's what we're trying to achieve, right? It's just a better overall homeostasis. And that's the goal. If there's like one word I want everybody to take away, it's like CBD equals better homeostasis frequently in a lot of people. Right, so we grow hemp here in Colorado, and most states in the United States now are cultivating hemp. All of that, what quantifies hemp in the United States is a plant that tests below 0.3% THC. Okay. All of our products are also required to be 0.3% THC or less. Those plants are then extracted through either CO2 or ethanol extraction. In our case, it's a CO2 extraction. And you are taking this raw plant material and you're getting this pure oil. Then if it's an isolate product, we're doing another secondary distillation, similar to how you would make alcohol, and you're running it through different heat and time spectrums, and you're pulling out individual compounds of the plant at different points in that heat and time spectrum. It's really exciting for us, and one of the things that we're doing differently than some of our competition is really looking at all these different compounds that are coming available, right? We have CBG, which is another cannabinoid in our topicals, because we believe it has the potential to be really therapeutic in that application. CBN is another one that's going to be really great for sleep. That we have some CBN products coming out really soon that are really exciting. And also terpenes, right? So the things that produce the smells and the flavors in hemp and in cannabis can work synergistically with those cannabinoids to create different effects. And so I think in the next few years, we're really going to be able to create some very specialty products that are really targeted to individuals through matching up these individual compounds as the science behind extraction and testing gets better. Currently, it's really hard for us to even test these individual compounds as we're isolating them. And so we're finally reaching this beautiful point in cannabis science where we know more than we've ever known, and every month we know more. I guess let me touch on the military first, because we're here in Colorado Springs. We support our veterans, and we provide a discount to military veterans, and we would love to be able to support active duty military. Our recommendation is no active duty military members should take any CBD products. Okay. There's some new, especially within the Air Force and a few other branches of the military, there is new guidance that specifically says no CBD. Okay. There used to not be tests available for CBD in blood. There now are. And there are also ratio tests. So if you're taking a full spectrum product, you get into a car accident while you're at work, you can now go to your employer and ask for a ratio test that can prove that you were taking a full spectrum CBD product rather than a THC product. That's good. So you pee hot on that THC PET test. You then do another test that shows the ratio of CBD to THC in the blood. Super important, right? So military folks, unfortunately, until you are no longer active duty, just please don't risk your career, is always going to be my recommendation. Yeah, absolutely. But in terms of athletes who are performing and are part of testing pools and are subject to WADA or U.S. Doping Agency regulations, the threshold used to be 15 nanograms per deciliter, which was, 15 nanograms per milliliter. And that number basically meant that you could smoke one hit off of your friend's joint 3 to 4 weeks ago and fail in competition testing or out of competition testing. They since have changed those rules to something that's really based in science. And now those numbers really are based on being incapacitated or being intoxicated. Yep. So the number now is 150 nanograms per milliliter. And that number is really associated with 10 minutes after you have consumed a joint of marijuana. So there's some really specific studies done around this. You have to smoke a whole joint, and in a few minutes you will peak at 150 nanograms. That'll hold for a couple minutes, and about 20 minutes later, the average person will be below that. Okay. So we're talking about 20 minute window after consumption that the majority of folks might test positive. If you're a very, very, very heavy medical marijuana user who's taking edibles on a daily basis, that might change. But for the average person, you would have to be high on the start.
Okay. And if you're making your career racing bike, maybe back off for a few days prior at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Just for safety. But
yeah. I mean, we don't want to have any questions. And one of the things I know from my industry is that we struggle with testing for cannabinoids. I guarantee you they do too. Yeah. And we see enough variances in the labs, and they actually have written into their rules some variances that actually mean you could theoretically be a little over 150 and still not test positive because they realize their equipment isn't accurate. And my biggest concern always for somebody who's trying to go to the Olympics or really wants this to be their career is that somebody in that lab doesn't calibrate that equipment correctly or something along those lines, and that very much could create a false positive, especially with cannabinoids, where we have so limited science around testing, and also the calibration chemicals used are not consistent from lab to lab.
With CBD specifically, not THC, if it's an isolate CBD product, is it pretty much safe at all points for an athlete, or would you back off prior to competition? So it's really great. WADA has issued very specific rules that CBD is allowed in competition. That's good. So, in the future, I think that we will see athletes in the Tour de France, in mountain bike stage races, in some of these longer endurance events, consuming sports nutrition with CBD. One, it's allowed. Two, I really think that in certain situations, it'll be beneficial for certain individuals. Especially in those long distance events.
I have, so in my 10 years, I have heard of a handful of people that claim to have marijuana allergies. And I do believe that some people can have reactions to certain compounds in marijuana or hemp. When we get down to these isolated extracts, especially when we're talking about CBD, the likelihood of having a reaction is infinitesimal. I mean, it's just not, I'm not going to say it can't happen, but you're more likely to have a reaction from my coconut oils that I'm infusing into my tincture than the CBD itself. The other thing I want to touch on really quick are these other cannabinoids. So currently, there's 120 other cannabinoids out there. None of them are currently allowed for in-competition use. The big ones right now are CBG, CBN, and those are the ones CBC. Those are the main ones you're going to come into contact with. There are no tests for these cannabinoids, and the only concern from WADA or USADA standpoint is intoxication. So they don't want you consuming super large quantities of CBN on the start line, right? CBN could cause you to have a little bit of lethargy. Same thing, high doses of CBD in some people can cause a little bit of lethargy. But in general, using any other cannabinoid product on the market is going to be safe, and they're not currently testing for any of them. And the rules are really based around intoxication again. I think that cannabis and CBD in general can be used as a great training tool and training aid. And the beautiful thing about it is that it's a personal experience. Everything I've said to you today is not a claim about my products. It's my personal experience with CBD. It's the people around me's experience with CBD. I'm privileged enough to have grown up around cyclists and endurance athletes, and there's a lot of folks that use THC products before a race. There's a lot of folks that use CBD products before a race, and or after a race. And I hope that having these kinds of conversations can open people's horizons to what's possible, and hopefully give them a better option than maybe some of the pharmaceuticals out there, right? I'm concerned, with our young athletes being exposed to doping, being exposed to narcotics, whether that is tramadol or Vicodin or other products you can get through TUEs. I hope that we can see WADA and USADA issue more TUEs for medical marijuana. We're not currently at a place where TUEs exist for medical marijuana. You could theoretically get one for Marinol, which is a pharmaceutical form of THC. But, I think that we still have some room to expand and advance. But in general, we're making strides. It's exciting.
Well,
thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you doing this. He's going to give us a coupon code. I'll have it on the screen and in the description below. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments. We'll do our best to answer them. And if you guys like this content, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and we'll try to bring you more of it. Thanks a lot.
And I'll try to keep a lookout in the comments. If you guys have specific questions, please holler, and I'm happy to answer them as well.